We had a fantastic gathering with a few entrepreneurs in Europe, actually many, and we discussed about a little bit about business, but mostly not about business. So first, there were friends like Martin showing off with a very cool last goodies you have to have for a company. So you can see that now.
So you don't see migration from other sides to your side.
It's for your company?
Yes, this is actually something because we want to show that phone is very safe, very safe.
Probably some age-related migration.
But we talked in groups of people about topics that we were interested in, and of course I was invited to join a group and a conversation about how the internet is changing with politics, or is changing politics, and I thought I would give you a short summary of that. So the conversation was came to about like 10 points. The first one in the changes was authenticity, transparency. So you've seen on YouTube like Nicolas Sarkozy being drunk recently, or you've seen so many videos of other leaders caught saying something they don't want public. So basically this is less fake promises, probably less lies, because everything is on the record. There is no off the record anymore, really. So that's a new change, like more transparency. A second one is new leaders. I think we'll see new leaders emerging from the internet in politics in the few next years. This has started to happen, not really yet, but I think a few people can have enough influence to appear in politics without being, coming from the standard like training and education and being politics already. They come from nowhere. Second will be more participation. Third will be more participation. So we discussed that we wondered actually if a very high level of participation in the French elections was due to, in partly to the internet. I don't know, and we don't know, of course, but basically what we noticed in France and in other countries is that you can't avoid the dialogue, you can't avoid the debate. When there was such a big debate as the elections presidential in France, well, everybody was concerned, and especially on the internet, you had to give your opinion and get into this. So this is new, and I think the internet drives definitely more participation and more interest from the youth, from the young, which is a good thing. Easy to raise money for a political party, such as when Howard Dean, if I recall well the numbers, it was, I think, 45 or 75, I'm not sure, it's not the same, but like above $50 million in the new thing for his campaign. The new thing was in a $10 average donations, if I remember well, correct me if I'm wrong. And this is new. This was through PayPal. This was a new way to raise funds, and I think we'll see a lot of that in the US very soon. So that's a new way to get financed. Ease of financing, let's say. A fifth will be new way of governing a country, which I think we have not seen yet. But basically, it's the people have so much influence now online that they can put enough pressure on the government to change a law. That happened already in France, or to change a decision. Like there was a head of a school in France who was fired recently. A year and a half ago, I think, because he was blogging and showing off as a gay person on pictures on a blog, and the National Education fired him, and hundreds of bloggers started to express themselves saying this is not right, you should not do this, and he was basically put into a job again. So there are many examples, and I think we'll see many of people being able to change a decision, and the governments will have to pay more attention to what people say on the internet, because they will have enough influence to pressure without having to do a strike. I think the internet is probably going to reduce, especially in this country, the number of strikes. We'll see. But basically, people have more influence, and governments will have to pay attention to this. We saw a risk, number 6, between short term and long term. We thought that there would be a big risk that the governments would be tempted to manage on a shorter term because thanks to the internet and this new way of communication, everything is like short time. Everything is like, like you make a decision because this group has expressed an opinion this way. You make a decision because this is the trend of right now. And this is dangerous because we want our governments, of course, to manage countries longer term. So that's difficult. We saw a very big collective voice happening with groups or kids. It's very, very easy to have a collective voice and an influence, which can be very positive. If you look at against Iraq, there are so many voices around against the war. We saw soldiers having hundreds of comments on their blogs when they did write about it, but we saw also very negative voices, risks like having a collective voice for terrorists, hiring young Muslims into terrorism through online. That's very, very of course important front risk. We also believe that the internet is making the current institutions and media history because there is more and more audience on conversations on MySpace, on Facebook, on Bebo, and less on traditional media. But also the current institutions are completely disconnected to the way the young think, behave, discuss, and that's a very, very big trend. We believe that the current institutions are maybe not going to survive it in the long run. Also, another trend is more global and less local power. If you look at Google, we discussed like who has the most power, government or Google? Probably Google because it's global. Look at google.org. It helps. Hired Larry Brilliant. They're trying to improve the world on several topics, environment, of course, and others. And they're global. Look at Bill Gates, who's putting more money than the World Bank against poverty. So, we discussed this, like, do the governments play the same role as they were before? And definitely we think that it's not the case. And there is here a disconnect as well between the private and the public, because it looks like internet public or private organizations tend to operate better, faster, more global scale than governments. So that's a very, very interesting thing too. And they lose some local power because everything gets more global. Very interesting trend as well. And last is we finished by a question wondering if there is a power shift to the long tail. Are the current leaders losing power to the long tail, and will the current organization survives? We don't know. So, but when we had Joanna from Bebo here, and she said, look, we have almost no employees, and we manage, I think, if I remember well, 45. We have 45 million users, which has nothing to do with politics, of course, but like it shows that with very small number of people, you can have a very, very big, influence or gathering or a crowd. So that was a very interesting conversation. Give me your thoughts about it either in comments or in video if you like. And also talking about non-business topics, I had yesterday a dinner with the World Economic Forum about the theme of Davos 2008. It was a very interesting conversation where we discussed topics like, I tweeted them all, but topics like is Sarkozy going to change France or not? What is how do the young 12 to 18 years old think, and what's the gap between us and them, and what's the MySpace generation, like another theme possible. Of course, the power of Iran as a big threat to global to the world was another theme we discussed. We talked about all Europe, as we are in Europe, being basically out of the agenda. Asia doesn't care much. The US doesn't care much. So how can we revive Europe, which has been a theme we've been discussing. Like each time I've been like 6 times now to a World Economic Forum. So a very interesting conversation, and here is a small like a few words with Matthias from the World Economic Forum that I have here for you. So see you soon.